Physiological Psychology. This is fall 2023. I am your instructor, Bruce Bradway. Here's my name. I do have a PhD. Hence, some refer to me as doctor, not very many. Okay. This is where I am. I am in Lost Nation, Iowa. This is my telephone number. That's my cell phone number. Office hours, Monday and Tuesday in the afternoon, 3 to 5, and then Wednesday. Oh my goodness, that's not right. Wednesday, there we go. Wednesday and Thursday in the morning, 8 to 10. That's Mountain Time, your time. It'll be an hour later here, so it's 4 to 6 and 9 to 11 as far as I'm concerned, but it's 3 to 5 and 8 to 11, 8 to 10 as far as you're concerned. This is a number. This is my permanent, until they make me stop, my permanent Zoom number, and this is where I will be on those days. I have a computer. The school gave me a computer, and that's the only thing I do on that computer is Zoom. So that's me. This is my email address. This is an online class. This is the book we're using, Breedlove and Watson's Biological Psychology. It's by Sinauer. Interesting story. When I was working on my PhD, I started taking biological psych from one guy, and he had another book by Pinnell, another biological psych text, and it was crap. It was terrible. And so for some reason I needed to change classes, and when I did, the new professor used Breedlove and Watson. And Rosenzweig he died back in the 90s, but Rosenzweig was on there as well. And the text was so much better. That's why I use it today, because it's so much better than the Pinnell text that I started taking this biological psych in. Anyway, so you're using the same text that I used for my PhD. Okay, it's a 15-week course, and we will we'll be covering a chapter a week. But some weeks we'll double up, and that's week 8 and week 9, and there's one more. Week 12 we'll double up on chapters. So how do you pass the class? There will be a quiz at the end of each chapter worth 20 points. There are 18 chapters, so that's 360 points. Library paper worth 100 points. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then article critiques, there are 10 of them. Oh, I'm sorry, there are 15 of them. Yeah, each week. Each week we'll have to do a article critique. And there are 15 weeks, so and 10 points per article critique, so that's 150 points. Total is 610 points. So to get an A, you need to have over 550 points. Library paper is a 5-page paper. It's 5 pages of text. That doesn't mean 5 pages of references and 5 pages of introduction. That means 5 pages of text. I do count lines, and each page should have somewhere between 20 and 23 lines using a 12 font. If you use a 14 font, it's like somewhere between 18 and 20 lines per page. And since I count lines, you can use 16 font if you want. But don't. Use 12 font. Double space them. It really doesn't matter if it's single spaced or double spaced. I will adjust your paper so that I can read it, okay? So if you do something funky with your paper, I will adjust it. If you put it in some strange font, I will put it in new Times New Roman. If you put it in PDF, I'll convert it to a doc document, a Word document, so that I can edit it. Try to turn it in as a docx, and that way I can edit it and I can read it. I can blow it up. I can blow this thing up if I want to. See, I can adjust it. And I will, so that I can read it. I'm getting old, so that's something that happens. And here are all the criteria. The papers will be due on the 3rd of November. I do not count off for late work. So if something happens, somebody gets sick, and you have to spend 2 weeks in Flagstaff, and you can't work on your homework, don't worry about it. Just come home, and everything turns out okay, and then just catch up. That's all. You don't get extra points for turning things in on time, because you don't get points docked for turning things in late. So there you go. That is that's the rules. There are no rules. So paper's due on the 3rd of November. You've got a wonderful library to use, so use it. Article critiques, what I'm looking for is, I'm trying to teach you how to read an article, a journal article, and it has to be a research article, okay? A lot of times people will find really good articles about really good stuff, and so they write it all up, and it turns out to be an information article instead of a research article. Research article, actually, they did the research. There's only one other kind of article that you can use, and that would be a meta-analysis, where they looked at a lot of different article or research. They looked at a lot of different research and then put it all together. But otherwise, it's an information article. Lots of information articles out there. If it gives you a number as to the number of participants, the number of subjects that they use, that's a research article. Doesn't have any number of participants, then that ain't a research article. No way that's going to be a research article. Okay, so use a research article. And if you follow this criteria, if you write the title of the article, brief summary of the article, look for the research question or the hypothesis. What kind of a study was it? Was it qualitative, quantitative, or mixed? A lot of mixed research out there. Describe how the study was conducted. What kind of a sample did they use? Describe the target population. Sometimes the target population were rats or mice, and that's fine. That's still a research article. How did they select them? As long as it's not rats or mice. If they're using humans, usually they selected them because they were taking, freshman English or something. Okay. And then I ask you for information like, was it biased? And a lot of times they will use a biased sample. If I were doing a political poll and I only polled Democrats, or I only polled Republicans, then that would be a biased poll, because I would only be asking one group. So if I was asking Democrats, they'd say that Joe Biden walks on water. If I asked the Republicans, they would say that Joe Biden is the devil and that Trump walks on water. So then I want you to explain to me what the data said. I'm just looking for the results. Sometimes you actually find really fun articles, so I want to know what the answers are. What were the reported findings of the study? Were the findings statistically significant? That they should all state all of that. And a lot of times you can find this in the abstract, but usually in order to find how they chose the sample, you're going to have to go into the text. Sometimes they will come up with a conclusion that you know, only white people smoke because in their sample only the white people smoked. You'd have to say that that didn't reflect the actual findings. That's probably a pretty bogus research. Okay, and there's the due dates. I do have due dates, but you can pretend that those don't exist because you know that I do not count off for late work. Okay, don't plagiarize. Tell me when some piece of information comes from the text. When it's not your writing, I would rather read something that you wrote than something that someone or something else wrote. I don't have my, oh, there it is. Okay. Artificial intelligence, ChatGPT. I know ChatGPT is out there. I know that some of your instructors are going to let you use it. I do not want you to. And the reason is because I consider it cheating. One of my degrees is in English. I think writing skills are important. The ability to communicate, the ability to speak, that's important. The ability to write, that's important. The ability to think. Now, one of the problems with ChatGPT is you can give it 2 words, Navajo ceremonies, and it'll come up with and say, I want a 5-page paper on Navajo ceremonies using 10 resources, and they will give you exactly what you asked for. Now, you've done nothing except typed in the parameters. So you haven't explored it intellectually at all. You haven't done anything creative. You haven't done any writing. You haven't used your own intellect in order to find this information out. And that's the way I feel. Now, you may be dealing with different professors that say it's okay. We had this debate at the convocation, and I'm not sure we came up with any solutions or any. I don't know what the provost wasn't really in on the decision-making portion of this, but I consider it cheating. Okay, and if you cheat, then I will take points off. Why? What am I taking off? Well, let's see what kind of points there are to be had. Is that it? The rubric for research article. Okay, where's the rubric? There we go. Okay, this is a rubric for the paper. Very simple rubric. The ideas development, those are usually gimme points, but if you use ChatGPT, then you don't get these points because you didn't develop any ideas. The references are not your references, so you don't get any points there. So you've scored no points so far. Critical thinking, you've done no critical thinking, so you get no points there. Grammar construction, you didn't construct it, so you get no points there. The length is good, so you get 20 points. And the citations, you didn't do it, but I'll probably give you those points. So if you use ChatGPT, you get 30 points out of 100 for your paper. How about that? Now, the question is, can I determine if that's what happened? And the answer is, maybe not. Maybe you'll get away with it. But like I said, it's cheating. I consider it cheating. Sorry. And let me show you what I think is going to happen if we start using these ChatGPTs and all of this artificial intelligence. We won't have to think anymore. We won't have to do anything anymore, all by ourselves. Wait a minute. Let me get rid of this. Let's see. Okay. This is what I think is going to happen. To humans.
Haven't all morning, so let's hover over to the driving range and hit a few virtual balls into space.
Nah, we did that yesterday. I don't want to do that.
Well, then what do you want to do?
I don't know. Something.
Wow. Make a place scream.
No, it doesn't sound
Look, I'm tired of
So we'll
it.
talk next week. Over and over.
If you can't fold the straws,
No,
the episode isn't any good.
Hot. Over here.
Whoa.
Hello?
Tunnel. I'm in a tunnel. I can't hear you.
There you are.
By and large, everything you need to be happy. Your day is very important to us.
Hey, drink fun. Here, take the cup. Hey, take the cup.
Please remain stationary. A service bot will be here to assist you momentarily.
Stewards? Hello?
Please remain stationary. A service bot will be here to assist you momentarily.
What's that? What's going on? John? No. John. Hi, Wally.
A is for Axiom, your home sweet home. B is for by and large, your very best friend.
Time for lunch. In a cup. Feels beautiful.
I'm starting great. I know, honey. Men.
Attention, Axiom shoppers. Try blue. It's the new red.
Ooh.
Dates? Oh, don't get me started on the date. Every holiday I have been on has been a virtual disaster. If I had one who wasn't so superficial, you know. But people are good men out there. Well, I know. Well, I know because I've spoken to them. What the? Huh? Wow. Mary? Huh? Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Shane.
I didn't know we had a pool.
There you go. That's what's going to happen to humans if we stop thinking, stop writing, stop thinking. Anyway, let's see. People ask me, I'm 74 years old. People, well, I'll be 74 in October. People keep asking me, why are you still working? Well, if I was 74 years old, I'd be playing golf and taking naps. Well, you stop. You either use it or you lose it. And that's what happened to all those people. They've lost their ability to move. They don't even walk. Can't even lift themselves up. They need things to lift them up. Anyway, okay, so don't do Chat GPT. It's cheating. Okay, Biological Psychology, Chapter 1. Let's talk about what biological psychology is. Biological psychology seeks to explain behavior in terms of its underlying physiology, its development, its evolution, and its function. A central premise of biological psychology is that bodily processes, particularly those of the nervous system, are the basis of all behavior. Biological psychology is multidisciplinary in scope and draws on knowledge produced in diverse scientific fields in an effort to produce integrated descriptions of the generation of behavior. Psychologists, biologists, physiologists, engineers, neurologists, all of these people come together and they are the ones who have created biological psychology. Multidisciplinary. This is really kind of interesting because the English educational system focuses on one thing. They wanted you to either study this, but not anything else, or this and not anything else. That's the way it works. But in the United States, we are liberally educated. We have liberal arts. That's one of the reasons why you have gen eds. And I think it's a great thing. I have degrees in 4 different areas. I have a bachelor's degree in English. I have an associate degree in medical technology. I have a master's degree in international relations. And I have a master's degree in psychology and a PhD in psychology. 4 different areas. And as a matter of fact, I just received a magazine this morning about archaeology. Last week I received one dealing with American history. Multidisciplinary. I want to know everything. I want to read in different areas. A lot of people are myopic. Myopic means you can only focus on one thing. And I don't think that's right. I think you need to be as well-rounded as you possibly can be. And it's one of the reasons why I read a lot of books. I read a lot of literature. Right now I'm reading books about social media because I'm teaching the social media course. Social media, cinema therapy and social media. But yeah, I think people need to be as well-rounded as they possibly can be. Otherwise, you don't know anything about anything but what you studied in school, and that's really kind of tragic. You can only converse with people about psychology. You can't converse with people about Danae ceremonies, or what else is there out there? Medicine, archaeology. Well, anyway, we're going to talk about that right now. So biological psychology gets information from a lot of different sources: immunology, endocrinology, molecular biology, developmental biology, anatomy, paleontology, evolutionary biology, anthropology, cognitive sciences, computer sciences, psychiatry. There we go. And then we can go artificial intelligence. There's artificial intelligence right there. We've been working on artificial intelligence for 70, 80 years. It's becoming more and more sophisticated. It's taking over more jobs from actual humans. And in some cases, that's a good thing. In other cases, maybe not so good. Now, the beauty of my wide-ranging studies and concentrations is that I understand a lot of these things, a lot of them. I was talking to a colleague this morning, and he hates biology. He just hates biology. So, and he was one of my students. And I taught him biological psychology. And all through the class, he told me how much he hated biology, how much he hated biology, how much he hated biology. But by the end of it, he had enough information that he could pass, that he got an A in the class. Does he still hate biology? He thinks he does, but he knows a lot more now than he did before he took my class. Why don't I have this picture? I don't remember why I have this picture. Wait a second. I'll tell you later. This requires, okay, so what are we doing? Observation at all possible levels. This requires analysis at many levels, from molecular to macro activity to interaction with the environment. And so it has to do with social psychology, it has to do with the body itself, and then it has to do with the individual neurons and the functions of those neurons. 5 viewpoints of the biology of behavior. 1, it describes the behavior. 2, it studies the evolution of the behavior. Where did it come from? Have we always acted this way? 3, we are observing the development of the behavior and its biological characteristics over the lifespan. 4, studying the biological mechanisms of behavior. and 5, studying applications of biological psychology such as dysfunctions and lack of functions. And psychology used to be focused on that. That's all it really focused on. It didn't focus on anything positive. It just focused on deficits. It looked for mental illness was what we were looking for, dysfunctions. We were looking for problems. And that's where psychology came from. It came out of that mindset, the mindset that we have all these people that can't function in society, and we need to see if we can't get them to become more functional. And that's where psychology grew out of that concept. That's why Freud started writing. Freud was a neuropsychologist. I'm sorry, he was a neurophysician. He studied the brain. And then he realized that a lot of people have problems, but you can't find them. You can't go into the brain and find out where these things are. We can't do brain surgery and take this out of that person, because this has to do with their thinking, their feeling, and that's where psychology started. Psychology started as a philosophy because we couldn't pinpoint information. We couldn't pinpoint the structure that caused this problem, like we could with medicine. And he was a medical doctor. So he decided that we needed to talk about people's ideas. And maybe if we could change ideas, we could change behaviors. And that's where psychology came from. Before a scientist can do any research on biological function, they must decide to describe the function that they will research. And I have no idea why I have a picture of O'Donnell's Emporium, Hotel and Cafe. Not even sure where that is. By comparing species, scientists can speculate how behavior and neural structures have changed as species have evolved. And the idea is we evolved from lower beings, and this is where we are. That is a dolphin's brain, and that is a chimpanzee's brain, if I'm not mistaken. And you can see how similar the human brain and the chimpanzee's brain is, and the dolphin's brain, for that matter. This is a rat's brain. As an individual grows, they develop the ability to respond to stimuli. As the organism becomes more and more complex and other variables are introduced, behavior and response will change. This is known as ontogeny, how an individual changes over a lifetime, ontogeny. The history of a species tells us the evolutionary determinants of its behavior. The history of an individual tells us the developmental determinants. The scientist must regard the organism as a machine made up of billions of neurons. And the reason I have this picture in here is because when you look at this picture, this is what you're actually seeing. What am I talking about? Your eyes are moving and focusing on different parts of this sculpture. And what we are focusing on more than anything else is the middle of the picture, the ear, and the eyes, because this is a human structure. So we're looking at what the face looks like. We're trying to determine what the face looks like. That's where our major focus is. A major goal of biological psychology is to use research findings to improve the health and the well-being of humans and other animals. Numerous human diseases involve malfunctioning of the brain, and this is what we need to find out. This is an individual suffering from Down syndrome. Down syndrome is a malfunctioning of the brain. Why is that? Because there are too many chromosomes on the 20th chromosome. It's a trisomy 21st chromosome, sorry. Trisomy 21. It has an extra chromosome, and that has disrupted the facial features. Also has disrupted the structure of the brain. Now, sometimes individuals suffering from Down syndrome can be severe. Sometimes it's not so severe. It all depends on how much is involved. So what are we talking about? So let's say a man and a woman have a child that has Down syndrome, half of the genetic material will have the Down syndrome, will have the trisomy 21, and that will affect select things. But if the other DNA material is dominant, more dominant, then the malfunctioning material won't express itself as readily. So it all depends on whether it's the genetic material is the malfunctioning genetic material is dominant or more recessive. How about that? That's one of the reasons why you can see some individuals with Down syndrome. It's relatively severe. For other, the intellectual deficit is relatively severe. For others, you can barely tell that they have Down syndrome. There are 3 ways to look at a brain behavior relations. Somatic intervention, changes in the body, changes behavior. Behavioral intervention, psychological changes occur, and this changes body structure or function. And correlation, how do changes in somatic variables affect behavioral variables? If we increase testosterone in a male, will it increase his sexual response? Can we cause the same effect by electrically stimulating his brain? If we cut his vagus nerve, will he lack sexual response? These are the questions 3 interesting questions that we might ask. If we put 2 adults, you want me to answer the questions? If we increase testosterone in the male, will it increase his sexual response? The answer is yes, it will. It'll increase his sexual response. And once upon a time, and this is really kind of interesting research that they did, once upon a time they decided that they were going to cure homosexuality by increasing the individual's testosterone. The idea being that he's not male enough. And if we can make him more male by giving him more testosterone, that will change him from being gay into being heterosexual. So they did. They gave him more testosterone, and it did. It increased his sexual response, but it didn't change the individual that he was sexually attracted to. He was still gay, but he was because his testosterone had increased, he was having more sex. Can we cause the same effect by electrically stimulating his brain? And the answer is yes. There's an area in the brain that if we stimulate that area of the brain, all that's happening with testosterone is it's stimulating an area of the brain. If we can do that electrically, we don't need the testosterone. And so the answer to that question is also yes. If we cut his vagus nerve, will he lack sexual response? And the answer is no. He won't lack sexual response. He will have other problems, but he will still have a sexual response. If we put 2 adults of opposite sex together, will it lead to an increased secretion of certain hormones? And the answer is yes, it will. They will both start secreting more pheromones, for one thing. Yeah. And the male's testosterone will increase, and the female's estrogen will increase. Probably her testosterone will increase as well, especially if they're sexually attracted to one another. Then both of their testosterone will increase. Now the reality is that testosterone is the substance, is the neurotransmitter that creates the sex drive in both males and females. So yeah, it would increase. Can we change blood flow to the brain with select visual stimuli? And the answer is of course yes. If we change the circumstance of the interaction to include danger stimulation, will it cause a change in the response of the individuals? And we have found that yes, it does. So being in danger with somebody that you are attracted to will make you more attracted to that individual. Looking at people with frequent sexual response, will we find higher levels of hormones? And the answer is yes. Can we correlate high levels of hormones with frequent sexual response? And that answer is yes as well. The human brain and its peripheral neuronal structures can change with stimulation from the environment. This is known as neuroplasticity. Parts of neurons called dendritic spines seem to be in constant motion and can change shape in a matter of seconds. In a very real way, the other individuals can affect the change on the structure of an individual's brain. Stimulation will induce neuronal growth. Lack of stimulation will retard neuronal growth. And this is one of the reasons why some professors get you to think and other professors put you to sleep. If the material is interesting to you and it's exciting to you, then all these dendritic spines will start moving and you'll start remembering this stuff. So how do we do that as professors? Well, one way we can do it is to get your adrenaline level to increase. How do you get somebody's adrenaline level to increase? Well, you get them excited. If you can excite them. If you can get them to laugh, that works as well. Researchers have been able to induce the brain of human subjects to be more active by suggesting to select individuals that water that they would be dipping their hands in would be hot. And this is an experiment they did. And just by suggesting it, they thought that the water was hotter because they were told that. Subjects who did not experience the suggestion had less active brain activity and reported less discomfort from the water. Let's see what this is.
Being human. We each view ourselves as a unique and independent individual. But we're never alone. Millions of microscopic beings inhabit our bodies, and no two bodies are the same. Each is a different habitat for microbial communities, from the arid deserts of our skin to the villages on our lips and the cities in our mouths. Even every tooth is its own distinctive neighborhood. And our guts are teeming metropolises of interacting microbes. And in these bustling streets of our guts, we see a constant influx of food, and every microbe has a job to do. Here's a cellulitic bacteria, for example. Their one job is to break down cellulose, a common compound in vegetables, into sugars. Those simple sugars then move along to the respirators, another set of microbes that snatch up these simple sugars and burn them as fuel. As food travels through our digestive tract, it reaches the fermenters who extract energy from these sugars by converting them into chemicals like alcohol and hydrogen gas, which they spew out as waste products. Deeper in the depths of our gut city, the syntrophs eke out a living off the fermenters' trash. At each step of this process, energy is released, and that energy is absorbed by the cells of the digestive tract. This city we just saw is different in everyone. Every person has a unique and diverse community of gut microbes that can process food in different ways. One person's gut microbes may be capable of releasing only a fraction of the calories that another person's gut microbes can extract. So what determines the membership of our gut microbial community? Well, things like our genetic makeup and the microbes we encounter throughout our lives can contribute to our microbial ecosystems. The food we eat also influences which microbes live in our gut. For example, food made of complex molecules like an apple requires a lot of different microbial workers to break it down. But if a food is made of simple molecules like a lollipop, some of these workers are put out of a job. Those workers leave the city, never to return. What doesn't function well are gut microbial communities with only a few different types of workers. For example, humans who suffer from diseases like diabetes or chronic gut inflammation typically have less microbial variety in their guts. We don't fully understand the best way to manage our individual microbial societies, but it is likely that lifestyle changes, such as eating a varied diet of complex plant-based foods, can help revitalize our microbial ecosystems in our gut and across the entire landscape of our body. So we are really not alone in our body. Our bodies are homes to millions of different microbes, and we need them just as much as they need us. As we learn more about how our microbes interact with each other and with our bodies, we will reveal how we can nurture this complex invisible world that shapes our personal identity, our health, and our well-being.
The human biome, that's what she's talking about. And of course, it hasn't been very long that we have been talking about this, only about 20 years. And this is one of the reasons why we're finding more and more things dealing with diabetes and some of the other problems that people have. The more diversified your diet, the more likely that you have all of these different structures, these different bacteria and whatnot in your gut, and that's important. I've lived in Japan, I've lived in Germany, I've lived in Nebraska and Oklahoma, Mississippi, Montana, Ohio, California several times, Texas, of course, several times because I was in the Air Force. And I'm from Indiana, so lots and lots of different food structures, a lot of different bacteria needed to process all of those different foods. I was just talking to a colleague of mine, he's from Bangladesh. I was talking to him about what he eats. He mostly eats rice with curry sauce. And sometimes the curry sauce has meat in it, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it has vegetables. But as far as curry is concerned, it's a little bit too spicy for me. I have a gut that has been eating not very spicy food most of my life because I'm from Indiana. I grew up in a household that was German and English. So the foods that we ate were fairly bland. And because of that, I really can't tolerate real spicy foods. I also can't tolerate garlic in select forms, but I can't eat his curry. And he finds American food bland, and he's coming to the United States next week, so we'll see. He doesn't go to McDonald's. He doesn't go to Burger King. I guess he could probably go to Wendy's and have one of their spicy chicken sandwiches. I don't know. The last time I ate dinner with him was we had Chinese food. And the only reason he ate the Chinese food was because of the rice. He was after the rice. There we go. Many times, psychological research follows a plan of reductionism. The researchers begin with a general behavioral reaction and then follow it from the behavior to the central nervous system. Looking at the response in the brain, they locate the area of the brain that is affected. From the affected area, they isolate the single nerves that are affected. They then will look at the chemical changes that take place in the neuron. Using the technique of reductionism, researchers can break down the complex mechanism that leads to brain malfunctions. About 19% of all Americans suffer from some form of psychiatric disorder. Another 3.2% suffer from some neurological disorder. Alzheimer's disease is the fastest growing affliction in industrialized societies. Now the question has to be, why is Alzheimer's increasing? Are we eating too much aluminum? Is it the plastics in our environment? Is that what's causing the Alzheimer's disease? And the answer is no. It has to do with the fact that people are living longer than they ever have before. When I was born, life expectancy for me was 59. Well, I'm 73, so I've gone well beyond 59. But when I was young, I used to look at the obituaries because, I don't know, I was interested as to when I should have died. A lot of people were dying in their 40s and 50s from, usually from lung cancer of one ilk or another, usually from cancers or heart attacks. And of course, that has to do with smoking. And, people don't smoke nearly as much today as they did back then. As a matter of fact, there are half as many people smoking as when I was young in the 1950s and 1960s. Okay, what is this? Oh, this is telling us what people are dying from. Prevalence of neurological disorders. Let me do this again so that I have an arrow. There we go. Alzheimer's disease is number 1. Epilepsy is number 2. Stroke is number 3. Head and spinal trauma. We're talking about neurological disorders. Early developmental disorders, 750,000. Parkinson's disease and Huntington's disease, 500,000. This is incidence of psychiatric disorder, 19% of the population. What's the leading cause of psychiatric disorder? Anxiety is number 1. And alcohol and drug abuse is number 2. And then comes severe depression, and schizophrenia is way down the list. Much of the research dealing with psychology is done on other species. By comparing the reactions of other species, researchers are able to judge how humans will react in similar situations. 93% of the animals used in research are some form of rodent, usually rats and mice. Usually rats. Causes of death in lab rats. This is a joke. Cancer research, 22%. What else is there? Genetic disease research, 36%. This is a joke. Anyway, okay, so next week we'll tackle chapter 2. It's all about neurons next week. So see you next week.